Executive condominiums, or ECs. For many Singaporeans, these offer a unique value proposition. They're subsidized by the government at the beginning, but fully private and potentially very lucrative over time. But the rules of this game have recently changed. It's another episode of the Money Talks podcast with me, Andrea Heng. Today, we're talking about the recent changes that have been made to buying ECs and whether the era of flipping them is now coming to an end. With me to answer these burning questions is Ryan Ong, Deputy Editor at Stacked Homes. Welcome back to the Money Talks podcast, Ryan.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, good to have you back. Very timely indeed as well. So let's get right into it, right? The headline change for ECs, for buying ECs, is the minimum occupation period, or lovingly known to us as the MOP, which doubles from 5 to 10 years. Now, in real-world terms, from the day you sign the papers to the day you can sell your EC, how long are we actually talking about here?
So it's a little bit longer than 10 years because the MOP begins from the point of the project's completion. So you've got to give it probably about 3 years for completion. That's pretty normal. Mm-hmm. So from the moment that you buy all the way through to the point where you're able to put it on the resale market, it's probably going to be around 13 years.
Wow. Do people actually understand and know that ever since the changes were announced?
Well, some people do tend to forget the construction time, so that's an important part to
and
remember.
Renovations don't take months anymore.
If you're not too elaborate with it, I don't think it will be that long before you move in.
Yeah, but minimally 3 years, right?
But minimally, yes, around there.
Okay, so Ryan, I'm curious. You have your ear to the ground. I want to know, how have people reacted when these changes were announced to the EC market? Because I'm sure there were people already considering upgrading to an EC. What have they been telling you, and what are their biggest concerns?
So one of the concerns, of course, is primarily from upgraders, of course. They're the most affected. Those who are in their late 30s, early 40s. So a common concern here is age and the loan tenure. So if your age plus the loan tenure exceeds the retirement age of 65, that will impact the maximum loan quantum that you can get.
Yeah.
So for those who have to wait an additional 5 years before they can sell and then make their move to upgrade, this is quite a major concern because it affects the viability of their next move.
Well, another major change that was announced is the removal of the Deferred Payment Scheme, or the DPS. Can you tell me why DPS was so popular to begin with, and what is going to happen now that it is going to be done away with?
So the Deferred Payment Scheme is a scheme where you would put down a sum initially, and then you wouldn't need to make repayments for a certain amount of time, typically about 2 years or so.
Okay.
And then after that, you would start making repayments as per normal. What this effectively did was it allowed some people to purchase it first and then worry about certain financing issues further on down the line. Unfortunately, this adds somewhat to the cost. So typically you're buying at probably around 2 to 3% more if you're buying under the DPS.
Right.
So it does affect the headline price as well, right? And there are situations where if you're not careful, your financial situation might change further on down the road, and that causes problems for you because do remember, you've got an MOP as well. So you can't just quickly sell it.
Yeah, because 5 years is relatively quick. A 10-year MOP, especially when it depends on what life stage you're at and also your finances, right? As you don't know if you're going to get retrenched during that time, etc. Is that going to change the demographic of who can actually afford an EC?
I don't think that will have a very large impact because, first of all, if you think about it, they are paying a little bit less now, right? So
that's right.
They're not paying the extra 2 to 3%. Also, when you do buy an EC, it's under the Progressive Payment Scheme.
Okay.
So you're not actually paying the full loan upfront as well. As the developer hits certain milestones, the monthly loan repayments will progress accordingly. I think the issue is not so much an impact on the overall affordability. It's more an impact on who finds an EC attractive now.
Ah, okay. So what would be deemed an attractive EC with the new rules?
So we would predominantly be looking more at a self-selecting process now, where if someone's going to consider an EC, they're probably considering an EC where they're happy to stay for a
Right.
long time. If you are buying for genuine own stay use, you see your children going there, your parents live near there, I might say a 10-year MOP might not mean much to you. Even a 15-year MOP, not that it
Yeah.
exists, might not mean much to you because you're intending to stay there anyway.
Correct.
You want to live there, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you are thinking of using your EC as a stepping stone to somewhere else, if you're hoping to sell it for a good return after those 5 years, then something like a 10-year MOP might be very unattractive to you
I see.
because you're going to be kept there longer than you would expect.
And you're a bit of a slave to what the market dynamics are going to be 10 years down the road.
Yes,
That's a lot
that's
of
right.
uncertainty to pay for, right? Okay. We're also going to see a larger portion of EC units reserved for first-timer families, up from 70% to 90%. So that's relatively good news. The priority period also is now 2 years instead of 1 month. What do you think is the reason behind this change? Help me understand this.
So we've been seeing that a greater number of EC buyers in recent years have not been your first timers. But that being said, I think part of the reason behind this is really the price of an EC as well. Because if you own a property previously, if you had a flat to sell, you would probably be coming in with bigger sale proceeds. You can have an easier time with affording the down payment and
That's
the
right.
subsequent costs like renovations. So I would think it's predominantly that the people coming in from a previous property have that financial advantage. But that being said, it does help that we reserve more spaces for the first timers.
Yeah, very interesting to see how the market shapes up from this. So the timeline for full privatization of ECs, which essentially allows owners to sell their EC units to foreigners or companies. This timeline for full privatization has gone up from 10 years to 15 years now. So 5 years have been added. What impact do you think all these measures are going to have on the EC market?
So it makes sense to extend the time for full privatization to 15 years
Okay.
because it used to be after 10 years is full privatization, but since our MOP is now 10 years, it just makes sense for that to be extended. I actually don't see that much impact from full privatization being extended to 15 years because even amongst our current batch of ECs, I mean, we have seen that historically, we don't see many foreigners and entities buying ECs anyway. So that's one. And the other thing is, if you consider that, now foreigners have a 60% ABSD, that would reduce their numbers even further. I think full privatization does matter to an EC.
Okay.
In the sense that many, many decades down the road, there is room for a collective sale,
Sure.
for example, right? But the actual 15-year period, I don't think there's going to be any big price jump just because it's hit that 15-year mark.
Okay. So who are going to be the biggest winners and losers at the end of all of this?
I wouldn't really say losers per se, but it may remove one of the property progression options
Okay.
for certain buyers, those who are thinking of using the EC as a stepping stone. But even then, I'm not saying that it means a total end to that, because if someone is fortunate enough to be able to get an EC while they're younger, if you're in your 20s, for example, then perhaps even waiting 13 years is
Yeah.
not that much of a stretch for you, right?
Yeah.
But of course, if you're in your late 30s, mid 40s, then this might possibly remove the EC as an option for you if your intention is to upgrade.
Okay. So if I'm in my 40s and my intention is not to upgrade, but that's where I'm going to settle in, it's not going to be an issue either. Just like what you said earlier about the MOP, it's not going to matter to me, right?
Because you're probably going to be staying there longer than 10 years anyway.
Correct.
That's what I feel. So I don't think you really notice it if you're a real homeowner.
So for the person planning on getting an EC, Ryan, How much of a difference do these changes, right? The additional 5 years on the MOP or the removal of the DPS, how much difference is it going to make on me financially?
So with regards to the MOP, that's an issue of how much you're getting in terms of resale gain when you're able to sell and so forth. So that's less of an issue at the point of purchase. That's going to be an issue further down the road. That can impact you financially depending on how you're planning to exit it, right? How you're planning to upgrade and so forth.
That's right.
But as for factors like removing the DPS and so forth, I think these are more cash flow issues, right? Because you do need to use a bank loan for an EC. You can't use an HDB loan for this.
Right.
You're dealing with a variable interest rate as well. So you do need to kind of work out those numbers more carefully at the start.
Yeah, a lot of more planning, and I think a lot more planning for uncertainty
Yes.
is what I'm hearing from you. Okay, so currently as we speak, there are 5 EC projects already in the pipeline, but these are exempt from the new rules. Do you think there's going to be a mad rush for these last 5 projects because they don't have these rules anymore?
Right. So I do think there is going to be a rush for this. I mean, I don't think we can avoid the attention that's going to come onto the fact that this is your last shot at getting an EC. It's only a 5-year MOP. But that being said, again, if you are thinking of long-term owner occupancy, you really want a property just to enjoy, you might not want to be one of the people who rushes for these, especially if we see that the price point is higher because it is one of the last few, right? So if you're not in a position where you need to hurry and where you really just want a property that you can just live in and enjoy, maybe you might want to think twice depending on how we see the pricing get affected by this.
Okay, so don't need to join the FOMO. What other factors should I consider before deciding whether or not to join this mad scramble for the last 5 projects, or whether to determine whether or not it's even genuinely worth pursuing?
I think one of the issues that we shouldn't overlook is a real quality side to it as well.
Okay.
Over the years, ECs have kind of tremendously picked up in terms of quality, to the point where these days, sometimes if you don't tell someone it's an EC, they won't even know it's an EC.
I know.
Right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I do think that when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, when it comes down to living there and being happy with it, I do think that qualitative factor has to weigh into it, possibly even more so than some of the financial elements as well. Right? We really need to look at whether you're okay with the facilities, you're okay with the unit count, obviously whether the location makes sense to you. These really should still be the priority. These are the fundamentals.
We should never do away with that list. Do you think EC launch prices are going to change or move because of these changes?
I don't think we'll see the same kind of dramatic uptick that we saw over the past decade. So it did increase significantly over the past decade. So in 2015, it was probably around 794 per square foot, I think. But move it up to 2025, and then we saw it was around 1,756 per square foot. So it was almost around $1,000 per square foot more, right, over that decade. But that being said, if we look at the past decade, we see most of the price increases, about 2/3 of that price increase was in the latter half of the past decade.
Right.
And we had COVID.
Yeah.
So from
then that pent up demand from COVID.
Yes, was what drove that price up so high. And because COVID was this kind of black swan event, I don't think we should expect the prices to head up at the same pace that we saw over the past over the past 5 years at the very least.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
rate
think it
of
will be
change
that high.
basically won't be that dramatic.
Yes.
Right. And it should, basically what you're saying is the rate of change is sort of normal,
Yes.
COVID notwithstanding. With all these changes in mind then, is buying an EC still value for money? Especially for those with that flipping mindset, right? And I know that, we talked about how the tenure MOP is kind of not appealing to this group of people,
Right.
but what say you?
So even in 2025, when we looked at the prices back then, an EC was still around 20-30% cheaper than an equivalent fully private condo. You're getting more or less the same facilities. There used to be a time in the past, earlier generation ECs, where it was understood that an EC would be very far from the MRT station.
Yeah.
That's also become kind of less common these days.
Yes,
Even if it is far from the MRT station, our transport infrastructure is much improved.
for sure.
It's probably a short bus
Yeah.
ride, a couple
Not
of
to
stops
mention,
there.
I think ever since COVID, more flexible work arrangements have been in place. People are working at home more.
So again, going back to that qualitative side, the way that ECs have improved, I do still think it is a value buy because you're getting a lot of the same qualities at a lower price.
Can we think of it as, in spite of a longer time to privatization, can we think of it as I am buying into a condominium, essentially?
Yes, we should.
That mindset, right?
Yes, yeah. And this is also why I think this change is not so much a repositioning or a big shift, but it's a reinforcement of what the EC is meant to be for. It's supposed to be primarily for homeowners, right? For owner-occupiers.
Yeah.
And this is a way to stay consistent with that original mission. So you still are getting a very good value. You're getting a very highly subsidized property with amenities, facilities, and so forth that match private counterparts.
Do you think this, as a result, is going to shift buyers who were considering buying BTOs to the EC market?
I still don't think it will be a huge number of buyers because in the end we're still talking about a significant price difference between the two, especially the initial down payment that's needed. So I don't think it's going to cause a crowd of people to immediately shift from the BTO market to, now we're going to go with the EC route. But it may influence some buyers in that regard.
Okay.
I have seen, in fact, some buyers who are considering the difference between a prime HDB project, right, and an EC. That question has come up a couple of times. Yes,
Especially if you're comparing the 10-year MOP in the prime flat for the prime flat versus the 5-year MOP of the remaining 5 projects that are in place now, and also versus the new ECs under the new rules with the 10-year MOP. So there's actually a triangular comparison chart that we're looking at now.
Yes, it is.
Especially for the younger set and first-timers and young families who are thinking, what should be the value proposition here, right?
That question has come up more often.
Yeah.
But even in light of that, though, I do find that a lot of it comes down to timing as well. What's
for
available
sure.
when? Yeah.
Yeah, and market forces. Don't forget that as well. So I think you've given us a good lay of the land of the current EC market and what's going to happen, hopefully, what's going to happen in the near future when these rules kick in. Thanks so much, Ryan, for walking me through it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And thank you to our Money Talks community as well for tuning in, as always. Want to hear from you now, and I'm sticking this question to you. How do you feel about buying an EC now that the rules of the game have been changed? I'm curious about where you are in your decision-making process if you were considering an EC to begin with. And were you considering an EC that is still having that 5-year MOP before the changes, or are you going to hang back and wait for the new ones to come up because you're not in a hurry, like Ryan said? Let us know in the comments section on wherever you are listening to us from. You can also email us at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. This has been the Money Talks podcast. Hope you got a lot of benefit from this one. I'm Andrea Heng, signing off.